Welcome to Earth Mysteries. Today we're travelling to Avebury. I love Avebury. It's the largest stone circle and stone complex in Britain, much larger than Stonehenge, and probably built even before that time. But when we go to the Avebury area, there are many different constructs that I want to share with you. The first one I'm going to share with you is Silbury Hill. Silbury Hill is a man-made mound, a sacred mound, sacred mountain. And it sits quite low down compared with the Avebury Stone Circle. But with the Avebury Stone Circle and other constructs that I'm going to talk about, it sits on a very unusual magnetic anomaly, or where the chalk layers underneath these constructs create some what we call discontinuity of the magnetic fields. It acts somewhat by creating this area as if it's a peninsula. It holds the energy into this place. And somehow the ancient people of 4,000 years ago knew about this. So they understood that because of the chalk, not only was this creating a very strong magnetic field, but also because water runs beneath that chalk and gets absorbed into the chalk, that you also intensify this magnetic field. So it was understood that there were certain times of the year when the water was running high that this magnetic field would be very powerful. And hence people created this amazing mound, which is 130 feet high, and it's made up of chalk and soil and gravel and flint and many layered. And it's at an angle which is one could say, the maximum angle that you can achieve. I think it's around 52 degrees. And it's flat on the top. There have been attempts to send a shaft into the top to see what was in there. And of course they found some burials, but that doesn't seem to have any relevance to what really was going on. And what's really important is that around this mound are 6 concentric circles. So they were very specific about almost terracing or creating this mound with these circles. And what we understand, where you have those concentric circles, the energy builds up over the time. So what do people think that Silbury was about? I should mention there was a ditch around it. And in those times, the River Kennet would be much higher and the area would be flooded around Silbury Hill. So again, increasing the conductivity of this electrical force within this magnetic electrical force that was contained within the mound itself. So people see it as an energy store, not just a generator, but more of a store of energy that then feeds in to the structures around Avebury. Some see it as a pregnant woman, and certainly it looks like that. It's very much honoured by the feminine, and I could see that. And people talk about how Avebury itself, the whole area, is in honour of the different phases of the goddess, the fertility, the death phase. But this Silbury Hill with the big, what we might say, pregnant belly, is definitely this nurturing, this power place. And it feels as if Silbury Hill was created at a time, and this is just John Burke's idea, that it was created at a time where actually production of food was very low, seeds were not being fertilized. In fact, it was a time where we were facing poverty rather than richness, and therefore it was thought, let's spend time and effort, and it was a lot of time and effort, to build this mound to enhance the energy, obviously understanding the energies of the earth that run beneath Silbury Hill and how to harness that energy, bring it up into this pregnant belly so that it could then be used not only for fertilization of seeds, but also fertilization of people. And we believe that this is still working 4,500 years beyond when it was built. And maybe again, it's telling us something that we need to now recognize, that we can't just keep producing food, first of all, that has no connection to the earth. But also we need to understand it's not about not having enough, but the seeds themselves are not don't carry a life force that is strong enough to support our weakening immune system. And I think that this is what has been understood, that many a time around these sites you would find pits where there would be seeds in there from thousands of years back, or at least the evidence of them, and understanding that that's what they understood, that when they connected the seeds directly into these really powerful earth energies, and then you had the fertilization occurring through the movement of the water and the movement of the air, you created a much richer source of energy. Maybe we need to return to that. And as I'm listening and watching those who are talking about sustainable energies and looking at wind and sun and everything, I think, no, the energy that Tesla knew about, that these people knew about, is beneath our feet. But it can't be owned by one group. It is there for everyone. And I believe that our ancient and our ancestors understood this. And they knew that these energies would be heightened in the morning and die off in the evening. We call it the dragon energy. These dragon or telluric energies are very high in the morning, die off in the evening. They knew they were heightened at times where there was a lot of rain, or where the water would flow in a different way. In places like the Sahara, they would use the wind as a means of understanding that this was a very rich time for fertilizing their seeds. We need to return to these times. We need to understand how to work with nature, not against her. Stealing her energy is not the way to be in a reciprocal and a cooperative way with nature. And I think until we start to be more humble, this will continue to be a problem. So Silbury Hill is wonderful, pregnant valley with energy. And maybe my last thought on this is that I've also been aware that there are places around the world where these sort of mounds are built, sacred mounds, and they are said to be extraordinarily rich sources of this dragon energy coming up, and that many different temples and stupas and even the pyramids were built to contain this energy and to use it in a certain way. So I feel that it's our understanding of how to connect that energy, how to sustain ourselves with it, how to share it. We'll be moving on soon to Avebury itself. Now we move on to Avebury, one of the largest stone circles in the world, built probably about 5,200 years ago, and consisting of an outer ring and then two inner rings and two avenues coming in to that ring, and made up of many stones, some of which have disappeared, because there is a village right in the middle of the Avebury stone circles. And it is clear that many of the stones were broken up and taken for building sites, whether it's of the church or the houses, or even the pub, which is a great pub in the centre of Avebury. And the understanding of Avebury is that it is there, as you see these stone circles, but around it is a henge, and a henge is a bank and an inner canal, or an inner moat. And when you see this, you know that that moat was not built for defences, because most defensive mounds or banks have the moat on the outside, the ditch. And that obviously would be a way of protecting. So to build a bank and then put the ditch inside was an unusual situation if you were just using this for defence. But you will find that there are many henges around the world, and obviously we have the word Stonehenge. So this idea of why did they build a bank and a ditch? And then what was most specific, have two entry points pointing north-south. And what we now understand, again through Don Burke's book, The Seeds of Knowledge, is that when you build such a bank and such a ditch, you're literally stopping the flow of telluric energy, earth energy, dragon energy through the land. And you're then focusing it through the two entry points you have. So you're increasing the energy coming through the points where you want it to come, which is very clever. And it just so happens that those two entry points are also the points where the road meets another road. So there's a kind of a crossroads at those 2 points. It's fascinating. And you will also see that where the entrance point is, there are two major stones, guardians, both at the north entrance and the south entrance. And fascinating that you can feel their electromagnetic field, their force holding that guardianship, saying, okay, you can allow that energy between us. And from that point, and you see this on the map, is that from those entry points, you have two avenues going out. One avenue has disappeared because it's been used for building, but the other avenue is still there and you can walk along it. And what is described is that, again, as you move between the stones that create this avenue, there is an electromagnetic field, again, increasing your own energy or increasing the energy that's running along the avenue. And the way that they maintained the volume of energy that was coming is apparently they made the stones larger and larger as they got towards the stone circle. Very clever. So, what does all this mean? If we consider that Silbury Hill was this pregnant mother energy or earth energy, her energy then flowed down these avenues and increased the energy within the circles. Now, if you ask many people, they say, yes, many fertility rites are carried out there. This is what the Druids would use it for. Many fertility dances, whether it's at the spring or again in the harvest time. So it was understood that there was a different energy, different times of the year. But we must also just again consider that maybe this was fertility of seeds in order to plant them, again, to have a richness of a seed. Or maybe it was for humans, but it may have been for the land itself, the idea that you could build a circle and intensify the energy, making it so that the energy built up in that place, this electromagnetic energy, would then spread along or out through the grid of the earth or out through the energy field of the planet. So I wonder if these places were specifically created to impact not only a few people who could gather in those circles, but literally send consciousness out into the world. And what you'll see is that the circles themselves, where the avenues come in, it isn't just a straight north-south. It's as if they're coming in at an angle. And if you've ever seen the Bridget cross, it doesn't just cross across, it comes in at an angle, and because of the angle, it creates this force of energy, somewhat like a pull-push situation. And so if you imagine that you are pulling on a rope and you've got that rope tied around a center pole, if you just have two people pulling on either rope, nothing's going to happen. But if you create a little bit of tension where one person, let's say, is 30 degrees higher, one person is 30 degrees lower than the horizontal, you start to create this sort of churning motion. I hope that's making sense. And what does the Bridget cross and this churning energy have in common? They represent newness, spiraling creativity that's never been seen before. And I believe our ancestors understood that. They knew that at certain times of the year, it was so important for two different groups to be coming together, dancing along the avenues, passing through the gap in the henge, until they met in the stone circle, spiraling, dancing, singing. knowing that this would bring heaven onto earth and earth into heaven. And I believe they're asking us to do something similar. We don't need to go to Avebury to do this. We just need to have that spiraling within our hearts, to dance our dreams alive. Because it's time for new consciousness to be birthed onto this planet. I'll meet you at the West Kennet Long Barrow. The last place we visited was West Kennet Long Barrow. Long Barrow is a structure that has an entrance point. This one has 5 chambers inside it, 4 at the side and 1 at the back. But what's interesting is that those chambers only actually cover about 1/5 of the length of this long barrow. The rest are stones, made up of stones. And the whole length is about 100 meters. It has an east-west alignment, and the entrance point is covered by some very large stones, so you have to kind of walk around them to get into the chamber itself. Some say that those large stones were there to stop people moving in, but I think it actually holds the energy in, much more importantly. That's what I've seen in other dolmens and barrows, that you're actually sealing the chamber to keep the magnetic electrical energy inside. When you enter in, you see those 4 chambers to the side, and one of them has a large dish inside, very similar to New Grange. But each of the chambers has been built with sarsen stones or different stones that build up in a cobbled way. In other words, they narrow up towards the top, which again is a beehive effect, increasing the energy in each of those chambers. The large stones inside the barrow are sarsen stones, which are silica based. Silica is like in a computer, like in a watch. It holds energy, it stores energy, and accelerates or expands energy. So all of this tells me this barrow was not built, as many talk about, for burial of the dead. It is a place where you expand consciousness. You talk to the dead, where the spirits can meet you. And that's what I found. So as we walked in, there was this resonance, this feeling you experienced. And my friend and I toned as deeply as we can, because we know that the male voice toning seems to expand that consciousness in this place more than the higher pitches of a female. And so we toned very deeply and continued to tone, and we experienced overtones when we were doing this. We actually leant our foreheads against the stone itself. And what I experienced was beings coming out from the stones to meet us. We were doing this in love and light, and what we experienced was beings of light who were saying, "Oh, thanks for coming. This is really nice to see you." And so it felt like our toning was inviting those beings to come out. Now, whether this was beings within the stone, because stones hold spirits themselves, or that beings of light or spirits who had passed over were using this as a doorway, I don't know. We didn't get too long in there. People were coming and going, but long enough for me to realize that despite the fact they found people buried there, I think about 36 different corpses there, this was not the purpose of this barrow. It was literally a place of ritual, of portaling towards and between the worlds. And to me, the length of it, that is not actually chambered, as we might say, is to enhance the portal's energy. The stones used in the 4/5 of the barrow, which are much longer, were used to actually enhance the energy. So this is a very magical place to go to, and I always love going there. We were fortunate to be there just before the sunset, so we experienced that westerly sun just dipping away into behind the horizon. And from the place of the Long Barrow, you can see Silbury Hill. You can look across to Avebury, look across to the Sanctuary, to Windmill Hill. It really is a wonderful place to see everything. I hope you've enjoyed journeying with me, and I look forward to seeing you again in another Earth Mysteries video. Many blessings.